Good. All right. So my name is Brad Waldschmidt. I'm a consultant that works with NDOT on their traffic calming program. And that's why we're here to be talking today about Cunniff Parkway. So we have a few people as well on the WebEx. So if you see my headset here, it's just so I can be talking with them. And then we do have Liz who works with me on the traffic calming program also on the WebEx, so that I can be focusing on you all here and she can focus on anybody like Kristen who chats, so she can kind of help me at the end with questions. So that's kind of how we'll manage it. So I want to make sure I share my screen. Don't want to forget that. And so real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Liz, are you able to see my screen, the presentation slide on your end?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much. Excellent. So what we want to talk today is about the traffic calming program, what it is, how Cunniff Parkway was selected, some of the options on what we can do to try to manage vehicle speeds on Cunniff Parkway, sort of what the next steps in the process would be. And we also have, we'll call it a very early concept design that we've sort of generated to show you what something might look like. It doesn't have to be the final answer. We just brought something to kind of get initial feedback on, but it's very subject to change. So in the traffic calming program, we have 3 E's. The first is education. You educate me on and us on your street and how to pronounce your street name, but also the very real issues about speeding. While we're here to educate you about traffic calming, what are the options? What are maybe not some of the options? Enforcement is very much a part of traffic calming with police and everything. Enforcing speed limits, that's very much a part of traffic calming. It is something that NDOT does not have as much jurisdiction over. What we do have jurisdiction in NDOT and the traffic calming program is that third one there, the engineering. So it all matters. It all is part of the formula, but we really are here to talk about that third one because that's the program that you all have gotten into. So traffic calming, we focus on residential streets, usually not looking at Gallatin Pike or Dickerson Pike. We're looking at places where it's people's communities and their residences that now there's higher volumes and speeds. So we're here to talk about physical solutions to try to really reduce those speeds. And this is a traffic calming street program. I do not remember who, but someone submitted an application. There were several streets on the application. Cunniff Parkway is the one that got chosen. So we're looking at Cunniff Parkway. The other streets remain eligible for future consideration, but it is a street program. So we're here to talk about Cunniff Parkway. And we're looking again to try to address speeding, to reduce speeds and increase safety, which that's really the #1 priority for NDOT and Metro Nashville is safety. We do like to do a quick advertisement. We're here to talk about traffic calming, but if there's anything else, if you ever want to know about stop signs, or there's a fallen tree, or there are some signs, if it's traffic calming, we're not pushing you away, we're here. But if there's anything else you ever say, someone needs to know about this, just where I live, there's a traffic signal that power was completely out. And it was like an arterial with an arterial. So Hub Nashville, that's a great resource, whether you call 311 or go there, your request gets sorted to the right person at NDOT to do something. We also like to make sure people know about if you ever have questions about sidewalks or bicycle ways, Anna Dearman's the contact. And if you're ever interested in things like community service or adopting a street for cleanup, JD Lane is that contact. So that's sort of we like to make sure neighborhoods know about these. We'll now shift it back to the traffic calming. So over 400 streets have applied for traffic calming on their streets. It's very popular. A lot of streets experiencing higher speeds that just want a safer neighborhood to be in. So most recently in July, 24 of those 400 plus were chosen, Cunniff Parkway being one of them. So I'd like to make sure that people understand how these streets are chosen. So it is a very data-driven process. We look at speed, how fast are cars going in general above the posted speed limit. That's the biggest thing we look at. We also look at crashes, how many crashes are occurring along these streets. We also look at things like neighborhood destinations, it's like parks, schools, and then active transportation is sidewalks. I like to define active transportation. If you have a street that has a sidewalk, that's actually better than a street that doesn't. So if streets don't have sidewalks and people are having to walk in the street, that actually scores streets better for the traffic calming program, because we know the pedestrians are having to walk in that street. But so I believe that, along with the speeds, is one reason why Cunniff Parkway, while we're here talking about it, of the 24. So again, you all know, I think these are probably the signs that you were talking about here. You all know your street much better than I do. Posted speed of 25. I believe these are pretty good representative photos of sort of what Cunniff looks like. And so when I get to the concept design, we'll kind of talk through a little more of the details. But again, this, you all know, where we are here to talk about, though, just to make sure we're clear, Dickerson Pike right to the Green Acres, West Campbell. We're stopping there. So that was what the application requested. So we are stopping there, not continuing on Apple Valley, just talking about Cunniff. I also want to make sure you all know it is a collector street. There's 3 different tiers of streets. I would say things like Trebor and Northwind are locals. Dickerson Pike and Gallatin Pike are arterials. Cunniff is considered a collector, which means it's your neighborhood street, but it also serving a bigger purpose so I can't say that traffic calming is going to remove the cut through, because it's kind of intended to connect, but we can still manage vehicle speeds while they're doing it. And that's really what we want to talk about. So the next, I want to talk about some of the common traffic calming options or traffic calming measures. One of the more popular ones, you may have driven over them, are called speed cushions. They're black rubberized devices like what's shown on the screen here. People have to drive over them. They're about 3 inches at the highest point off the pavement. So that highest point is about 3 inches, and cars have to drive over them. Everyone does. The comfortable speed varies by person. I personally am comfortable going over it at 15 to 20 miles per hour. But people ask, what's the speed cars are going to go over this? It varies. But they're designed to be gone over around 20, 15 miles per hour to sort of manage that traffic. And these usually get placed multiple locations along a street. Another option is these radar feedback signs, like on the left here, where in addition to a speed limit sign, it'll have an electronic display that flashes. It shows your speed, but it flashes if you're exceeding the posted speed limit. This has been proven to be helpful, including on streets in Nashville. Some people may choose to disregard that. That's totally true. But there are also people that just space out and they're driving, and this is their reminder. And even that little bit of a improvement is still an improvement. So radar feedback signs can indeed be helpful. Another option is narrowing. I don't think Cunniff Parkway would be a really good candidate, but there are some streets in Nashville you may have driven on some where you drive onto a residential street and you're just like, wow, that's a lot of pavement out here. So sometimes, kind of like on that left picture, NDOT will throw down the white lines to kind of just make it seem narrower for cars. So some streets we do that, and it's very effective. I'm not sure Cunniff Parkway is a good example of that. So we've looked at that. Just know that's an option. Maybe not. We're probably not going to focus on it much for Cunniff, though. Speed tables are very similar to speed cushions. The main difference is it goes across the entirety of the street, and they are longer. They actually are, as your car drives over them, they are longer. I like to think the comfortable speed is more around 25 miles per hour, just a little faster. Sometimes NDOT will consider speed tables on streets. One reason why we typically prefer the speed cushions is these do slow vehicles. They also slow emergency vehicles. Like that's the truth. And so a fire truck or an ambulance going over the speed tables will be slowing down when responding to an emergency. I'm going to go backwards now to the speed cushions. The cushions are designed such that a fire truck and ambulance, the front wheels can actually straddle these, and the back tires, those back tires sometimes do barely get up on the edges. I call it the ramp up. The back tires might, so they still have to slow down, but it's not a full ramp. That's not a very technical phrase, but it's not a full ramp. And so that's one reason why usually we're wanting to do something like tables, maybe we're usually going to look to cushions first, just because it is better with emergency vehicle response times when compared to the tables. We also look at traffic circles, much smaller roundabouts. There are a few intersections in Nashville that have these. One of the biggest struggles is fitting some larger vehicles like school buses around these. making especially a left turn. So sometimes we will look at traffic circles to see if they're feasible. Sometimes they are, a lot of times they're not, because the residential streets, again, are not that big, and the traffic calming program, it does not widen pavement. It does not take anyone's property or right away. It's really taking what's out there today and trying to do the best we can. So if there's any desires for traffic circles, we're happy to take a look at it. Sometimes it's an option, but certain intersections work, but a lot of intersections don't. But it's still a good traffic calming, because you have to, even if you're going straight, you have to turn your steering wheel to go around it. That turning of your steering wheel is usually causing a slowdown for vehicles. Another option here, I think the last one in the slide deck here, is a chicane. The left side shows it with pavement markings, again, causing cars to kind of have to turn their steering wheel instead of just imagine a straight line. I would say most drivers, not all, most drivers would want to approach the chicanes with a slower speed because of the turning. And you can see on the right is an example of a schematic of something physical was actually built. Again, the traffic calming program does not widen pavements. Knowing the Cunniff Parkway section, there's not a lot of extra pavement to do something. So I wanted to show it to y'all just to educate. Some streets, actually, this is a viable, but for Cunniff, maybe not so much. So this is kind of the where we're at in the process and where we're going next. Then I want to switch over to that concept design and get the initial thoughts. So we're here at meeting 1. After this meeting, we're going to take our concept design. We're going to make it more of a final design. I'll get into the specifics here in a moment. Then we'll have another meeting. You'll get mailers, just like the ones you got. We'll have a second meeting. The concept design is going to be kind of high level. The second meeting with a more detail, it's going to be very specific. You're going to be able to see exactly where is my house and where's the nearest speed cushion or whatever thing. That's kind of the process. After that, it's going to go to an online ballot. Something that's kind of unique with NDOT is the traffic calming program is reliant on voting, and voting by the property owners along the street. So if I'll just go in turn. Once we get through the second meeting and have a design, we'll put out the ballot. And if you have property that touches Cunniff Parkway, if you're a residential homeowner, then you're going to be able to vote, whether you want it or not. And there's a 6-week voting period. And if 2/3 of all those who vote yes, we want this traffic calming, you're going to get it. If you don't meet that 2/3, you're not going to get it. So this is a program where Nashville wants to make all streets safer, but with things like traffic calming, NDOT wants the buy-in from the neighborhood just to make sure that it's not applying something that's not wanted in a neighborhood. Many of these votes are successful, but some fail. Some streets vote and say, we don't want this. So that's why this voting is in place. Yeah, you had a question, yeah. Correct.
And there's 15 on the street and 5 people responding.
Correct. So the example you said, just for the people on the virtual call, if there's 15 people along, I like to use the 100. If there's 100 people, because my math, I can do it in my head. If there's 100 people, on the street, property owners on the street, only 10 people vote, but 7 of those 10 vote yes. That's 70% of those who voted. So the old policy, it was a little more challenging to meet. What NDOT's done with some policy adjustments is the don't cares or the I'm just don't whatever, they don't count against. They don't count for or against. So it's truly 2/3 of the property owners that actually vote and respond. And it's limited to 1 vote per property owner. So if you have 3 people living in a house, it's 1 vote for that address. If you have 5, if 1 property owner owns 5 properties along a street, it's 1 vote, 1 property owner. That's something we're trying to make sure we clarify. So that's right. And so that's a recent NDOT clarification on, it's not a rewrite of the policy, it's a reinforcement of what the policy reads. So so it's each person who owns property along Cunniff Parkway will have the chance to vote. The church would not, but residential properties would.
If their property abuts it, but their driveway is not, still considered as property?
Yes. So the question was, if a driveway or a mailbox is off of an intersecting street, but your side yard touches Cunniff, that's adjacent to Cunniff, you're going to get that, just like they should have gotten the mailer for this meeting, and they will for the second meeting, they will also get a vote. So That was NDOT's way to sort of avoid where's the driveway, where's the mailbox, just if your property touches it. So, yeah. Yes. Yeah, so the question was about renters, and that your question, council member, was kind of referring back to the old policy. So now that NDOT is sending mailers for the meetings and also sending mailers for the ballots to vote online, and NDOT is looking at property records and sending these to property owners. So if there is a renter, but the property owner lives in Kentucky, these cards are going to Kentucky. And that's NDOT's focus on the property owner is why. So there may be a renter on Cunniff Parkway who's unaware of this because the messaging is going to the property owner. Yeah. So yeah, so let me go ahead and switch over now to the concept graphic, and I want to talk through this a little bit with you. If you bear with me, I'm trying to bounce. All right. Liz, are you able to see this concept design on the screen here?
I see the slide titled concept design.
Okay. Thank you. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties, so what I'm going to do. Let me try. All right, so Liz, how about now?
Yes, now I can see it. That's
Okay,
the
great.
one.
We're good on the WebEx. All right, so this blue line represents the Cunniff Parkway we're looking at, Dickerson Pike to Campbell Green Acres. From our site visit, we saw that right near Dickerson Pike, it was kind of hilly. And then as you continue on, there's some horizontal curves, and I would say rolling vertical curves. But then right around Northwind, we get that steep hill, and it kind of levels off again near the church. So this is just one concept design. Now, I will tell you all, those speed cushions look really close together, okay? Because we're zoomed very far out. What we typically try to do is design the speed cushions about 400 to 500 feet apart. Anything closer, it's just like you're in a parking lot. Anything further away, it gives drivers that want to speed more opportunity to speed between them. So I know it's kind of hard to see, but each of those cushion locations where you see the SC in sort of a photo example up there, those are about 400 to 500 feet apart. And then as you continue on toward going east, you'll see those radar feedback signs. I don't really have a legend. That's my mistake. But those R's in the red, those are those radar feedback signs. The reason is we are limited by steep hills on putting these cushions because, well, the vendor actually won't cover it if it's too steep of a hill. If it starts getting damaged, they just won't cover it. But also, just, they get bolted into the pavement, so enough, hits, and it could kind of shear off. So unfortunately, that hill limits us, but we still feel like where it's possible, perhaps doing one of those vertical measures like cushions could work. And then where that hill really ramps up, going but one in each direction for the uphill and the downhill, doing one of those radar feedback signs. So that's our initial concept design, but it's truly a concept. We can change this. We're open to some suggestions. We just want to kind of like show this here and get some initial feedback.
Speed cushions and water runoff.
Yes.
Because we're directly across from Cunniff Core. Everything runs in our front yard.
Mm-hmm.
Position of 5-10 feet either way make a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm asking, do you consider the water runoff?
We do, but we feel pretty comfortable with the speed cushions typically not creating a water runoff issue any more than what's out there today. Now, I know there's a picture of speed cushions up there. I'm not going to bring it up, but earlier there's the speed table, the one that went across the entire pavement. In our experience, speed tables are good for traffic calming, but I mentioned the emergency vehicle. If it's on a hill, it can also kind of create a ponding effect If it's down a hill, one of the benefits of the cushions, in addition to the gaps for the emergency vehicles, is there are more, I'll call them channels, for the water to flow, whether it's right down the middle, or hopefully if the roads are designed the way they should have been, where there's a crown in the middle, and it maybe not. I don't want to just I well, maybe I shouldn't go there then. But either way, the benefit is the cushions. If there is a lot of runoff, if there is an issue, the the gaps shouldn't create any additional beyond what's already happening out there. NDOT hasn't gotten many concerns or Hub Nashville requests about cushions making water runoff much worse. But what I can tell you is if there was an issue, NDOT would respond to it, would want to know about it, and it would do something about it if it was creating an adverse effect. And the other thing I'll mention is that in addition to making sure these speed cushions would not go on steep hills, we also make sure they're not going right in the middle of intersections. So for instance, Phonic Drive there, it kind of looks like we're putting that speed cushion right in the middle of the intersection. We would not do that. We also make sure we do not put it right in front of someone's driveway. In other words, they're designed for people to be going straight over them. It's fine if cars are turning at an angle, but we try not to do that to residents along the street. So we do try to, space it 30 feet away from y'all's driveways. So that's also part of it as well, is trying to make sure that we're thinking about all those things. Yeah, Bo.
Have no problem with speed cushions at all. Guess my concern will be I live right on
Hmm.
the people who would have continued to go on. They have two options. They can either turn right or it seems like some of the traffic
Yeah, so Bo brings up a good point. If there are speed cushions that one day get installed on Cunniff Parkway, it's possible some drivers may want to avoid those and instead use West Campbell or Northwind. And Bo, the fact is you're absolutely right. And that is something that as engineers we struggle with on a daily basis of solving one problem. And it's usually not even have we created another one. It's like, where have we I mean, it's usually just so we do the best we can at NDOT and engineer. So, but I think your observation is very astute. I think the best thing that NDOT always suggests is if Northwind and or West Campbell wanted to submit an application for traffic calming, because there are some streets in Nashville, especially some grid shaped streets where it's like, if you start looking at that, it gets out of control. So we are focusing on Cunniff Parkway, but what I can tell you is that if there was more cut through and they were really speeding and you had an application on file and that data supported that, it's possible Northwind could be a future project. Sure, hope that doesn't happen, but that is a possible reality. It's possible. Now, Bo, you all are more experts in the neighborhood than I am, but I will tell you, just looking at it, if I'm wanting to go down Cunniff Parkway west toward Dickerson and turn right, there's a good chance I'm using Northwind or Campbell already. Now, if I, yeah.
80% of your traffic does that.
And likewise, if I was going west on Cunniff Parkway toward Dickerson, I wanted to turn left. I don't know if I would go out of my way. It's possible, but what I can say is if there was a problem, we're always twice a year we accept applications for traffic calming. So
is there or was there any consideration for the four-way stop?
yeah, good question. So was an always stop ever considered at I'm gonna try to get all four of them because they're all four different. Cunniff, Apple Valley, West Campbell, and Green Acres. They all have a different leg. So always stops are considered by engineering studies and through Hub Nashville. Traffic calming program does not do always stops. This is a very common question we get. Many people think adding more stop signs will slow people down or make them stop. The unfortunate reality is, I will say personally, I see two types of neighborhoods throughout this program. One type doesn't have enough stop signs and wants more and wishes traffic calming which we're not going to. It's an engineering study that can be done through Hub Nashville. The second type of neighborhood is the ones that have always stops and said, how can you get people to actually stop at our stop signs? And it's always one of the two. And unfortunately, people are just not obeying the laws, whether it's speed or stop signs. So because the reality is, if an always stop isn't, or if a stop sign's not needed, and people stop there and realize they're never having to wait on another car, they start not wanting to obey that stop sign. And that's one of our biggest fears from safety, is that people aren't. So I will say you can submit a Hub Nashville ticket to see if that intersection should be an always stop, but it's not a traffic calming toolbox that we're here to talk about for traffic calming. I think you were saying right here, right?
See them come under the bridge, they get right there in front of the church and they can see that long hill.
Mm-hmm.
They just the same as they do. They get the trailer, they can see down. That's where I've seen four people, four cars, and passing each other right in front of my house, and I've seen them pass school buses.
God, passing school bus is not, that's not good.
I go to Parkway Baptist where the church park is, and our Mother's Day Out program gets out around 2:30, which is about 30 minutes after.
Mm-hmm. We can take another look. We can take another look at that, about maybe having a cushion location between. Yep.
It does seem like cushion between farming and close. Between Trevor and Gordon.
Well, and Councilmember, my preference wouldn't be to move, but to add. My preference. So we're talking about Cunniff between Trevor and Northwind, and what we can do, Bo, is we can go back out there again. I know that hill starts dipping. There's a certain steepness at which we can still put them on, but so we want to get. So that's why we're at this meeting, right? We can go do another measurement on that hill to see. So then the second meeting, I know you're going to ask me, what'd you find out about that hill? But that we can look at that. If it's not too steep, we may be able to fit one in between Trevor or Northwind.
You've taken care of the problem with this end, but this end can change.
That's true. That's true. We try to avoid putting these in the middle of horizontal curves, but I mean, it's possible, maybe right in here somewhere. This is good feedback from the meeting. Yeah.
You have to live there to see it. It scares you. I know my grandson.
Oh, wow.
I have the whole bit. Prepare to get hit any day.
Well, something. Go ahead,
Is
Jeff.
there signage that goes at both ends? I've seen that on some of the.
Yes, thank you very much. The question was, is there signage? So each location where these speed cushions would get installed, there's going to be a yellow warning sign right next to them, or like 50 feet before them, that says speed cushions. It'll usually have like a warning speed of like 15 miles per hour. So those warning signs would go in at nearly every location where an SC is shown.
Are there warning signs at both ends?
We typically don't. What we try to do is we try to do more of highlighting at each one the warning signs. So there have been previous years where NDOT has put like some neighborhood traffic calming signs to say, hey, you're in a traffic calming street on either end. What we think is way more productive is speed cushions with a warning sign right there. So if someone doesn't know Cunniff Parkway, we don't want them to get surprised. So that's why we try to make sure these signs are there. You all will know they're there, but so instead of just one sign on either end, each location would probably have a warning sign that says speed cushions.
Is the first speed cushion at the top?
You know, I'd have to go back and check. I, I know right when you turn from Dickerson, it's a steep hill, but then it levels off, and I feel like for the concept that that westernmost cushion would have been near the level off point. Exactly, and you mentioned it's hard to tell. That's why we haven't gotten too detailed. Like, what do you think? And we've already gotten some great feedback. Maybe looking between Trevor and Northwind, maybe looking at a cushion here. What the next meeting would be is we can take this feedback, revise the design. We're gonna have more zoomed in photos. You're gonna see more zoomed in of each speed cushion. You're gonna be able to see your rooftop. We even label the street house numbers that are in front of where the cushions are going, so people can get a really good idea of where that kind of just more detail, but so that people know what they're voting on.
Has there ever been a traffic study? How many cars go?
Yes, I don't have that information in, but so, well, so, so when we collect speeds for each street, Cunniff Parkway, which was one of them, we're also collecting on that same day, a 24-hour volume count. After the meeting, I could very quickly pull it and tell you what it was. It's not secret. I want to make sure we don't delay anybody on the call, but I'm happy to share that if you give me like 3 minutes after the meeting. We can tell you what the 24-hour. No, it's great. I love educating people on like how many cars per day are on their streets. So we can absolutely get that. See, I can pull that up after the meeting. Yeah. Well, I will say this feedback, Liz, I want to make sure I'm not focusing on the in-person. Was there any chatting or any questions that we need to address from the chat on the WebEx?
Nope, no questions from the WebEx.
Okay, no questions from the WebEx. And we're here. I'm not trying to rush you a lot. So yeah, you have another question, ma'am? Yeah.
Because we don't have sidewalks, and people do walk on the street, as scary as it is. And so with the speakers,
Mm-hmm.
Just a point.
still for people to walk.
Yeah, it depends on the width of the street. So sometimes yes, sometimes it may be tight. I'll be honest with you. I'd have to do some very quick math. I don't remember if Cunniff Parkway is 22 feet wide or 20. We've measured it. I just can't remember off the top of my head. Each speed cushion is 6 feet wide. So there's 2, so there's 12 feet of rubber that's going to be out there. And usually what we're trying to do is about 2.5 or 3 feet of gap between them, and then also on the edge of the road, rough. So a lot of vehicles, whether it's a stroller or a family walking, usually they can fit through. I will be honest, if there is a street that was narrow and it's kind of a tighter fit, I guess that would be something the voter would have to think about is, do they not want to have to worry about dodging cushions with their stroller and not get the cushions to slow the cars? Or would they be okay with that, knowing the cars are going to be slower? That would be interesting for each voter. That's why we leave it up to the voters to, yeah. Excellent. So council member, we do not do bike lanes as part of the traffic calming program. I think that is something on the previous slide, Anna Dearman, you probably could ask NDOT about Cunniff Parkway and the possibility. I think you're right. I have not done an engineering study, and this is outside of my traffic calming, but I think there's probably not enough room with the pavement that's out there for bike lanes. But again, it's you have a narrow street, which is helpful because there's not this excess pavement, but it does limit some of the options. Yes.
Thing that you like about what you call it, speed cushions,
Mm-hmm.
is there is a lot of fire and police traffic. I mean, like you said, it's a connector. And,
She's a fire hall right now.
and, you know, we see probably one a night go by, two. So, you know, that cushions as opposed to the wider.
Mm-hmm. And we've heard that response from the fire department as well. They understand the value of saving lives, and so they understand traffic calming is appropriate, but they do have a slight preference for the cushions over the tables. One thing I will add also is the cushions. You may not be able to tell it. The photo in the presentation I gave earlier actually showed a little bit of a shorter cushion compared to that photo right there. There's a little longer, not quite as long as those tables. We are trying to look more at sizing the cushion lengths based on the street. So we would propose a little bit of a longer cushion because it is a collector. It is getting used a lot. Local streets with lower volumes, we're kind of focusing on I'm gonna call them the shorter 7-foot long cushions. We would be looking more like a 10.5 or a 4, which basically means your car there's a little flat spot in the middle. It's not as, I'm gonna call it jerky for lack of a better word. But that is something on Cunniff Parkway, given the amount of cut through. Again, we're not trying to encourage speeders. We just want to encourage more closer to that posted speed limit, and cushions are going to do that regardless of the length. But that's kind of what we'd be looking at for Cunniff Parkway.
Would there be repaving before this would be done? Because I know
Is it? Okay. Yes, a lot of great comments. I want to make sure I hit them all. Traffic calming program will not really get into repaving. There is a repaving list somewhere. I don't have it, but there is an NDOT resurfacing list. I'm not sure how it gets prepared, but a lot of great engineers put it together. So there would be a way to find out where Cunniff Parkway is on that list. As far as the time frame, what I'm going to do is and we will have to see if I cause some issues with. I'd like to go back to that time. I have that one slide I'd like to bring back. I think it's a helpful graphic right here. So let me share my screen. All right. All right. So we are here at the first meeting. The design may give us 4 to 6 weeks. I'm really hoping you can hear from us in January. I'm not going to bother you over the holidays, but I'm really hoping in January we'll coordinate with council member again and look to schedule another meeting. The meeting might happen in late January, early February, but our hope would be to have a final design sometime in January. So that meeting number 2, let's just say February. We'd really like to meet with you all a second time in February. Love the space. If we get this space again, that'd be great. And then the online ballot. After meeting 2, sometimes a few changes are needed, and we might go back to the drawing board a little bit. Sometimes right after that meeting 2, we go to ballot. We send a third round of those postcards out for the online ballot, and it's 6 weeks. NDOT allows 6 weeks voting. Sometimes people get theirs lost, and they have to call in that, hey, but we try to make sure we give adequate time for people to vote at the end of that 6-week period. So if meeting number 2 is in February, let's think this out. The voting might close in mid-April, maybe. And we would know if Cunniff Parkway was a successful or unsuccessful vote. So if it's successful, you go to construction. Now, I've got good news and bad news about the construction. The good news is so many streets are having successful votes right now. There's a lot of streets that are being safer, getting a lot of traffic calming. The bad news is the contractors are very, very busy, and then the wait times to get those rubberized, because NDOT doesn't have a warehouse with all those rubberized cushions. They're having to order them. So it is taking many months right now through no fault of it. It's just the contractors only. If you all know contractors that want to install a track, we'd love to. But yeah, so I really think it would be by the end of 2023. I hope it's sooner than that. But on the honest, if the ballot closes in April sometime, I would really, I would hesitate to commit by July or August. Now maybe the waiting and maybe it'll all kind of ease up and we can give you a pleasant surprise. But that's probably the reality. Is I think later in 2023 with all the contractor going around installing these on several streets in Nashville.
Would they take into consideration if they're going to be repaid, say in 2024? Would they wait until the repayment?
Sometimes, Yes, that is something that NDOT looks at. They look at what streets are successful with traffic calming before these things get bolted in, and then they look at the repaving schedule. And there's usually some dialogue with the neighborhood and the council member time frame. I'll just give you, for instance, if the cushions could get installed and 1 month later that road's going to get repaved, we're probably just going to wait. We're probably just going to wait and wait. But if it's like 6 or 8 months, we might want to hear from you all, because the good news about those rubberized cushions is they bolt in. So if you put them in, and then 6 months later, they got to unbolt them for a couple weeks and you resurface them, they're going to get bolted right back in. So you're not going to lose your cushions with the repaving. But we do look at that. Some streets, there have been some delays because of the repaving. There's always neighborhood council member dialogue instead of just NDOT making that decision and not communicating. There's always communication on that.
Makes sense. Foolish question, but is there any chance that all this money can be sucked up by the mayor?
So
Because I've been through this before, back when last time our roads were paved. Before, when they were building the last stadium, the sewers came through the road. That's when they paved our road last time. That's probably back in the 80s. Anyway, the way they turned the road, it dumped all the water. And they came out and said, "Oh, you've got a real problem. My ditch went from this deep to that deep."
Okay.
So they came and said, "Yeah, we need to put off all the way around and take that runoff off of you." Great. But I'm sorry, we don't have any money because it's all going to the state.
Gotcha.
6 years later, they showed up and fixed my yard.
Okay. 6 years later.
If it gone from this deep to that deep.
What I can tell you is the money for this traffic calming cycle that Cunniff Parkway is in, it is allocated. It has been voted on by, so I cannot promise you anything, but what I can tell you is there's money in the program. We're here. This isn't a, hey, we're going to design and then see if money pops up to actually build it. Nope, it's there. It's there. It's there today. I can't answer your other what ifs, but
Probably don't get planned on it.
But so far,
I wish I was as optimistic as you.
Any cooperation from the county to take that money away.
I haven't seen that happen yet so far in the traffic calming program in the past 18 months. That's the best I can tell you.
Well, we had built $2 billion bridge.
Anyways, but yeah, that's about it. So yeah, I think we've gotten good feedback. Sounds like there's favorable response to concept design. We're gonna look at a couple, and then maybe look at a couple more locations. You may see us back out there in December and early January doing some measurements. So I may wave to you if I see you out there, right there at the corner of Northwind. And then yeah, and honestly, if there's a desire for an all-way stop, that's a Hub Nashville, a council member you can ask. Because yeah, it's not traffic calming, but it is engineering study to see what's appropriate, which is just as important, just not in this silo that we're talking about. So excellent. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for those of you who are on the WebEx.
Thank you, Brian.